My name is Hannah Carter, and I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, my mother called me 3 days before Thanksgiving and said one sentence that knocked the floor out from under 27 years of trying to belong. Don't bother coming home this year. Ashley doesn't need the stress. No explanation. No apology. Just a door closing on the only family I had. I ended up spending that Thanksgiving by myself in a restaurant in Chicago, picking at a turkey dinner gone cold while every other table overflowed with laughter. What I didn't know yet was that the strangers seated next to me were about to become my real family. I had no idea that 5 years later, those same people would be standing at my wedding, introduced as the parents of the bride, while the people who actually gave birth to me watched from the back, uninvited, finally understanding exactly what they'd thrown away. It was November 21st, 3 days out from Thanksgiving. I was in my cramped studio apartment, half my bags already packed, a pumpkin candle burning to try to get myself into the spirit of things. The plane ticket home to Ohio was already bought, non-refundable, naturally. My mom's name lit up the screen, and I answered with a smile. "Hey, Mom." "Hannah, I need to tell you something." Her voice was clipped, distant. My stomach sank instantly. That tone never came attached to good news. "What's going on? Is Dad okay?" "Your father's fine." A beat. "I've been thinking, and don't come home this year." I laughed, assuming it was some kind of joke. "What are you talking about?" "Ashley doesn't want drama. She's pregnant again, and she can't handle the stress." My grip tightened on the phone. "Drama? I haven't even spoken to her in months."
Exactly. Let's keep it that way.
"You know how you get." "How I get?" My voice cracked. "Mom, all I did last year was ask why I wasn't invited to her baby shower. That's not drama, that's a question. See, that right there is exactly what I mean. Everything always has to be about you." I stood frozen, watching snow drift past my window. 27 years old, and my own mother was telling me I wasn't welcome at her table because I'd once dared to ask why I was being left out. "Mom, I already bought the ticket." "Then get a refund. Ashley's pregnant. She doesn't need this." The call dropped. I understood completely. I'd always been the one they were willing to sacrifice for everyone else's comfort. This wasn't even close to the first time. Sitting on the edge of my bed staring at a useless boarding pass, the memories started piling up like a highlight reel of disappointment. My 16th birthday. I'd spent months planning a small gathering with my 3 closest friends, cake and bowling, all set. That morning, Ashley called in tears because she'd bombed her calculus final and needed comforting. My party got canceled on the spot. We spent the whole day consoling her instead. "Don't be dramatic, Hannah. Your sister needs us more right now. You can celebrate next weekend." We never did. Then there was my college graduation. 4 years of late nights, part-time jobs, instant noodles. I graduated with honors, the first in my family to do it. I scanned the crowd for my parents during the ceremony. Their seats sat empty. They strolled in 2 hours late. Ashley had a prenatal appointment that couldn't be moved. "You understand, sweetie. Your sister's baby comes first. More important than me." That's all that ever meant. I learned fast that complaining only made it worse. Don't be so sensitive. Why can't you just be happy for your sister? So I went quiet. I made myself smaller, easier, almost invisible, hoping that if I shrank enough, I'd finally be worth loving. At 27, sitting alone with a worthless plane ticket, I finally understood the truth. There was no version of small that would ever be small enough. I called my dad next. Some small, stubborn part of me still believed he'd finally take my side. The phone rang 4 times. "Hey, kiddo," he said carefully. He already knew. "Dad, did Mom tell you?" A long pause, a football game murmuring in the background. "She mentioned it. And you're okay with this?" "I'm not allowed at Thanksgiving with my own family?" Another pause, longer. "You know how your mother is. She's choosing to exclude me, Dad. That's what's happening." "It's not like that." "Then what is it, Dad? Tell me. Because from here, it looks like you're choosing Ashley over me." Again, silence. I could hear him breathing, could practically picture him slumped in his recliner, rubbing his forehead the way he always did when he wanted to vanish from a conversation.
Dad.
Do you want me there? 5 seconds.
10.
I think it's better if you just go along with your mother this year. Something inside me went still, not angry, not even sad. Just empty. Okay, Dad. Hannah, don't be. I hung up before he finished. He never called back. I sat there as the light faded, watching shadows crawl across the floor. My father had one chance to choose me, and he chose silence instead. He'd always claimed to be stuck in the middle, but the truth was simpler. He always landed on their side. And in that darkness, something quiet and decisive settled into place. If I wasn't wanted at their table, I'd build my own. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and freezing. I woke to footsteps overhead, kids laughing, the smell of someone's stuffing drifting through the vents. My phone stayed dead silent all morning. Not one call, not one text. Around noon, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. There it was, Ashley's post. The whole family gathered at the table. Mom, Dad, Ashley, her husband Tyler, their toddler in a tiny turkey print sweater, everyone beaming. The caption read something about being grateful for the people who matter most. I counted the chairs. 5. Not one empty seat for me. They hadn't just left me out. They'd erased me entirely. I shut the app and stared at the ceiling, half tempted to just order delivery and disappear into bed for the day. That's what the dramatic daughter deserved, right? But something in me refused to play that part. I grabbed my coat. If I was going to eat alone, I was at least going to do it somewhere with light and life around me. Lakeside Tavern was one of those old Chicago institutions, dark wood, brass fixtures, cloth napkins, candles glowing on every table, and one of the few places open on the holiday. The second I walked in, warmth hit me. Roasted turkey, fresh bread, the soft clink of glasses, and families everywhere, the kind who looked like they'd been laughing together their whole lives. The hostess gave me a pitying glance. Just the one tonight? She wedged me into a tiny two-top jammed between the kitchen door and a long table of what looked like 3 generations of one big, loud family, close enough I could have touched their chairs. I opened my menu and tried to look like solitude was a choice. The family beside me passed dishes back and forth without asking, talked over each other the way only people who deeply love one another can. Watching them, something cracked open in my chest.
This is what family is supposed to look like.
My food arrived looking magazine perfect. Golden turkey, cranberry sauce, a flawless scoop of mashed potatoes. I couldn't taste a bite of it. I sat there shifting food around my plate, trying not to picture my own family back home passing the gravy without a single thought toward the daughter they discarded. And then it hit me. This had never really been about Thanksgiving or Ashley's pregnancy or my mother's peace. This was a pattern that had shaped my entire life. 27 years spent folding myself smaller and smaller, swallowing every hurt, apologizing for having feelings, staying silent until I spoke up, only to be told I was too much. And what did it get me? A cramped corner table, a cold dinner, a photo with no empty chair. The tears came before I could stop them. I turned toward the window, pressing my napkin to my eyes, trying to disappear the way I always did. Honey. I froze. A warm, concerned voice. Are you okay? I looked up to find the older woman from the table beside me standing there, silver hair, kind eyes, the kind of face that looked like it had spent a lifetime actually listening to people. I'm fine, I said automatically. Allergies. She raised an eyebrow, gentle, not judging. Allergies don't usually make a person cry into their napkin on Thanksgiving. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That obvious? Only to someone paying attention. She had a soft voice with steel underneath, a woman who'd clearly seen things. I'm Susan. Hannah. She glanced back at her table, then at me. Nobody should eat alone on a day like today. Come join us. I shook my head instantly. Oh, I couldn't intrude. You're not intruding. I'm inviting. There's a difference. I hesitated, but my cold plate, my empty table, and my still damp napkin made the choice for me. Okay, I heard myself say. If you're sure. I'm positive. Come on, we just opened more wine and there's far too much pie. I followed her on shaky legs, with no idea that one small act of kindness from a stranger was about to rewrite the entire course of my life. They folded me in like I'd always been part of the group. Someone pulled up a chair. Someone else handed me a plate before I even sat down. "I'm James," the older man said, shaking my hand. "This is my wife, Susan. Our son Mike and his wife Jennifer, their kids Mia and Tyler, and our youngest Ryan." Ryan, around my age, dark-haired, easy grin, caught my eye from across the table. "Fair warning, my dad's about to tell a terrible joke." "I am not," James protested. "He is," said Susan. "He told it anyway." The kids dissolved into giggles. Jennifer rolled her eyes. And I actually laughed. A real laugh, the first one all day. James raised his glass. "To unexpected guests who make our table complete." Everyone lifted their glasses, me included, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Warmth, ease, belonging. Later, once dessert was cleared and the kids had run off to explore the restaurant, Susan slid into the chair beside me. "How are you doing?" "Really? Better," I admitted. "This has been really nice." "Thank you." "You're welcome," she said, sipping her wine. But that's not what I asked. Something about her directness made me want to be honest. "I'm having a hard Thanksgiving. Want to tell me why you're really here alone?" I hesitated, but she just waited, patient, no judgment anywhere in her expression. So I told her, the call, my sister, the silence from my father. They call it drama. That's what they call it when I ask questions they don't want to answer. Susan nodded slowly. "I used to be a family attorney, 30 years of it. I've seen every flavor of family dysfunction there is. And in my experience, the people who accuse you of causing drama are usually the ones creating it. They just need someone else to pin it on." The words landed like a physical blow. "You are not the problem, Hannah," she said, covering my hand with hers. "You never were." I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. Those were words I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. When the bill came, James waved off my wallet. "Our treat. Consider it tradition. We always buy dinner for new friends." As we gathered our coats, Susan pressed a small cream-colored card into my hand. "Susan Reyes, JD, family law, retired, with a number and an address in Evanston. Call me." "I mean it." James shrugged on his coat beside us. "Sunday dinners every week, our place. You're always welcome." "That's so kind, but I couldn't." "She could," Ryan said, stepping in. "And she should. My mom never says things she doesn't mean." Susan squeezed my hand. "Family isn't blood, Hannah. It's showing up." I stood there in the lobby, snow falling harder outside, holding an open invitation from people I'd known for exactly 3 hours. "Okay," I said. "Maybe I'll stop by sometime." I didn't go the next week or the week after. It felt too forward, too much like intruding on someone else's family. But Susan called anyway, just to check in. By early December, I finally worked up the nerve. I stood on the Reyes family's porch in Evanston for a full 5 minutes before knocking. Susan opened the door before I could second-guess myself. "There you are. We saved you a seat." That was the first of many Sundays. Over the following months, I became a fixture at that table. James taught me chess and beat me every single time. Susan handed down her secret pie crust recipe, the one she swore she'd never written anywhere. Mike's kids started calling me Aunt Hannah without anyone prompting them to. And Ryan and I became real friends, the kind who text random thoughts at 2 a.m. and argue about movies and just end up sitting next to each other at dinner without anyone arranging it. My biological family went completely silent. No calls, no texts, not even a Christmas card. And for the first time, I genuinely stopped noticing because for the first time, I wasn't performing for anyone's love. I wasn't shrinking to fit anyone's expectations. I was just loved. It felt like finally arriving somewhere I belonged. One spring afternoon, about 8 months in, Susan and I sat on her back porch while the garden came alive around us. "Have you heard from your parents?" she asked.
No.
"Haven't reached out either." "Do you want to?" I actually considered it. Sometimes, late at night, I think about calling my mom to try and explain. Then I remember, there's nothing to explain. She knows what she did. She just doesn't believe it was wrong. That's a hard thing to sit with. It is. I pulled my cardigan tighter. I keep waiting to feel guilty. Everyone says blood is thicker than water. Susan took a sip of her tea. I've never believed that. In my career, I helped plenty of people find legal recognition for the families they built, not just the ones they were born into. The law recognizes what the heart already knows. Family can be made, not only inherited. I didn't fully grasp what she meant yet. Something to think about, she said, and let it go for the moment. But her words took root, quietly, waiting for the right season to bloom. It happened so gradually, I barely noticed it happening at all. 2 years after that first Thanksgiving, Ryan and I weren't just friends anymore. What had grown between us felt less like a beginning, and more like the recognition of something that had always been there. He took me back to Lakeside Tavern for dinner. "This feels circular," I said, sliding into the booth. "That's the point," he said, visibly nervous, fidgeting with his napkin. "I wanted to bring you back to where it started."
He reached for my hand.
"Hannah, I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you. Every single day. I know your family hurt you. I know you're scared of people who are supposed to love you letting you down. But I'm not going anywhere. I never have been." He pulled out a small velvet box. "Hannah Carter, will you marry me?" I couldn't breathe. I looked at this man who'd been my friend first, then my confidant, then my anchor through years of healing, and I saw my whole future in his face. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes." The restaurant burst into applause. I hadn't even noticed the other diners watching. And tucked into the corner booth sat James and Susan, champagne already poured, beaming like they'd known all along. "Mom couldn't resist," Ryan laughed. I was about to officially become part of this family. Wedding planning began immediately. Venues, caterers, flowers, the whole overwhelming, exhilarating mess. But one detail kept me up at night. The invitations needed a line for parents of the bride, and I had no idea what to write. David and Karen Carter hadn't spoken to me in over 2 years. No birthday calls, no acknowledgement I existed. I couldn't put their names on my invitation. They hadn't earned it. I was pacing the Reyes' living room one evening when Susan found me and asked what was wrong. I explained, the impossible blank line I couldn't fill. She sat me down. "Remember what I mentioned once, about legal recognition for chosen family?" I nodded slowly. "Adult adoption," she said gently. "A legal process where a consenting adult is formally adopted into another family. It creates a real, legal parent-child relationship, new birth certificate, new next of kin, all of it." For the first time, I understood exactly what she'd been hinting at all those months ago. A few weeks later, my mother showed up unannounced at my apartment. "You can't just replace us," she said, eyes sweeping over my bookshelf. Photos of me and Ryan on a beach, me and Susan making pie, the whole Reyes family at Christmas, me right in the center of every frame. "Who are these people?" "My family." Her face twisted. "I am your family." "You were," I said evenly. "You chose not to be. Remember? Ashley didn't want drama. That was one Thanksgiving. You can't still be upset about that." "I'm not upset," I said calm. "I've moved on. And in the years since, you never called, never checked if I was alive, never once acknowledged I existed.
So no, Mom.
You don't get to show up now and act like you have a claim on me. I want an invitation to the wedding."
No.
I walked to the door and opened it. "You don't get to erase me and then demand a seat at my table." The wedding day arrived golden and perfect. June, a vineyard in Sonoma County, rolling hills, an outdoor ceremony followed by a reception in a stone barn dressed in white roses. In the bridal suite, Susan adjusted my veil while I studied my reflection. The woman looking back at me was steadier, stronger than the girl who'd sat alone in a restaurant 5 years earlier. That girl hadn't believed she deserved love. This one knew better. On the vanity sat the wedding program. I picked it up and read a line I never thought I'd get to write. Parents of the bride, James and Susan Reyes. Below it, smaller, the family who chose her. "Nervous about marrying Ryan?"
Susan asked.
"No," I said, setting it down. "Nervous about what might happen. I'd quietly arranged for security, a precaution, after my mother's visit." Susan squeezed my shoulders. Whatever happens today, you have a family who chose you. We will always choose you. I hugged her tight. I love you, Mom. It was the first time I'd called her that, and the word came out like it had been waiting years to be said. Her eyes glistened. I love you too, sweetheart. My daughter. The ceremony was everything I'd dreamed. Ryan waiting at the end of the aisle, James walking me toward him, steady and proud, vows we'd written ourselves that left half the guests in tears. When Ryan slid the ring onto my finger, something clicked into place, like the last piece of a puzzle I'd spent my whole life trying to solve. Midway through the reception, a security guard found me. Mrs. Reyes, there are 2 people at the entrance claiming to be your parents. I'd half expected it all day. Ryan stiffened beside me. I'll handle it. No, I said, taking his hand. This is my moment. I'll handle it. I could have had them turned away. Instead, something in me said, let them see exactly what they lost. Let them watch the family that showed up when they walked away. Let them in, I told the guard. But don't seat them with the family. Back of the room. Quick question before the big moment. If you were my shoes, would you have let your biological parents into your wedding? Type yes or no below. And if you want to see what happens next, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. The MC stepped to the microphone, and the room quieted. Before we continue the celebration, please join me in welcoming the parents of the bride, James and Susan Reyes. The room erupted. James and Susan rose, waving, beaming, as guests cheered and a camera flashed. Across the room, my mother's face drained of color in real time. The confusion, then the disbelief, then the moment the meaning landed. She grabbed my father's arm. What did he just say? He stood frozen, speechless. To every other guest in that barn, James and Susan Reyes simply were my parents, full stop, no asterisk. My mother pushed through the crowd before anyone could stop her, reaching me just as the applause faded, face flushed, eyes wild. My father trailing behind, looking like he wanted to evaporate. What is going on?
Who are those people?
My legal parents, I said, calm and steady. I was adopted 2 years ago. She staggered back a step. You can't just replace us.
I didn't replace you, I said.
You abandoned me first. We never abandoned you. You told me not to come home. You chose Ashley. Every time, for 27 years. Nearby guests had gone quiet, conversations dying mid-sentence. That's not fair, she started. You want to talk about fair? I spent 27 years trying to earn a place in this family. I got an Instagram photo with no empty chair for me, a holiday dinner alone, and 3 years of silence. I'm still your mother. Not legally, I said, holding up my left hand, both rings catching the light. Not emotionally. Not anymore. This is humiliating, she hissed. Then leave, I said softly final. You showed up uninvited. You don't get to play the victim. And then, for the first time in my life, my father spoke. Hannah. His voice was rough, broken. I'm sorry. I turned and actually looked at him. David Carter had aged more than 5 years should account for. Grayer, smaller, but his eyes were wet in a way I'd never once seen. I should have done better, he said. I was a coward. I always was. I knew how your mother and Ashley treated you, and I just stood there and let it happen. My mother grabbed his arm. David, what are you? He shook her off. You were my little girl, and I let them make you feel like you didn't matter. A tear slid down his face. I'm so sorry. The words I'd waited 3 decades for, arriving far too late. I know you're sorry, Dad, I said gently but firmly. But sorry doesn't undo the years you stood by and watched. It doesn't give me back my childhood. It doesn't fix this. I know, he said, wiping his eyes. I know it doesn't. Susan appeared at my shoulder, silent, her hand on my arm, a quiet reminder I wasn't standing there alone. My mother turned on her with open hostility. You're the one who stole my daughter. I didn't steal anything, Mrs. Carter, Susan said evenly. Then what do you call this? James stepped up beside his wife. He wasn't a confrontational man. In all the years I'd known him, I'd never heard him raise his voice. But what came out now carried steel. I think it's time for you folks to leave. Who are you to tell us anything? I'm her father, James said, voice carrying across the now silent crowd. Legally, and in every way that matters. You stole our daughter. No, ma'am, James said, calm and certain. We didn't steal anything. You gave her away. We just picked up what you threw out. My mother flinched like she'd been struck. 5 years ago, this young woman sat alone in a restaurant on Thanksgiving because her own family told her she wasn't welcome. My wife invited her to our table. We fed her, we talked to her, we treated her like a person. He stepped closer. Do you know what she told us that night? That she couldn't remember the last time she felt like she mattered to anyone. 27 years old, and she couldn't remember ever feeling wanted by her own family. My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. We didn't steal your daughter. We just showed her what family is supposed to look like. The rest was her choice. He turned to the crowd. This is my daughter's wedding day, the happiest day of her life, and I won't let anyone ruin it. He signaled the security guards waiting nearby. Please escort them out. As they approached, James put his arm around me. Hannah's a Reyes now, he said quietly. And Reyeses protect their own. I held up a hand before the guards could move. Wait. Everyone froze. My mother looked at me, something like hope flickering in her eyes. Maybe she thought I'd relent. I walked toward my biological parents and stopped an arm's length away. Mom. Dad. The words still felt foreign aimed at them now. I need you to understand something. My mother lifted her chin. What? I don't hate you, I said. I've made peace with who you are. You're not villains. You're just people who couldn't love me the way I needed. People who chose comfort over fairness. People who let one daughter disappear so the other could shine. My father was crying again. My mother's face stayed a mask. But I've also made peace with who I am, I said, standing straighter. And I am someone who deserves to be chosen. Not as a backup. Not as an afterthought. Chosen first. I looked at them both. The parents I'd spent a childhood trying to please. The family I'd shrunk myself to fit. You didn't choose me. I gestured toward James and Susan. They did. And I choose them. Silence swallowed the room. 100 guests didn't move. My mother opened her mouth again. I didn't let her finish. I'm not erasing you from my history. I'm just not giving you a seat at my table anymore. That's not revenge. That's just the natural result of your own choices. I nodded to security. Goodbye, Mom. Dad. As they were let out, the guests broke into applause. Not for the spectacle, but for me. The rest of the night was everything I'd hoped for. Dancing, cake, Ryan spinning me until I was dizzy with joy. For a few hours, I let myself forget the confrontation entirely and just be happy. The next morning my phone exploded. Texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Messages from aunts and uncles who suddenly had opinions. How could you do this to your mother? Family is family no matter what. I deleted them all without a word. Then came a message from someone unexpected. My Aunt Diane, my father's younger sister. Hannah, I heard what happened. I want you to know I'm proud of you. I always knew Karen and Ashley treated you wrong. I tried to say something once, and your mother didn't speak to me for a year. But you deserved better. You always did. My eyes burned. I typed back. Thank you. That means more than you know. My mother posted some dramatic status online about ungrateful children and modern families forgetting loyalty. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That evening I blocked every number and account tied to the Carter family, not out of anger, but out of peace. Ryan found me on the balcony of our honeymoon suite. You okay? I looked out over the golden vineyard at sunset. Yeah, I said, leaning into him. I really am. For the first time in my life, I'm not carrying the weight of people who never wanted to carry me. I'm free. 2 weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived. The return address read Ashley Carter Bennett, my sister's loopy, perfect handwriting, the same script from birthday cards that always felt more like obligation than affection. I almost tossed it unopened, but something made me sit at the kitchen table and read it. Dear Hannah, I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, but I had to try. Mom told me what happened at the wedding. She's devastated. Dad hasn't been the same since he got back. I think seeing you that happy without us broke something in him. I never meant for you to feel excluded. You always made things so difficult, always asking questions, bringing up old hurts. It was exhausting. Maybe one day, when you have kids of your own, you'll understand why Mom made the choices she made. I'm not asking for an apology. I just want you to know we still love you, even if you've decided we're not good enough anymore. Your sister, Ashley. I read it twice, folded it, and tucked it in a drawer. Ryan found me at the table. What did she say? Nothing new. She still doesn't get it. She never will. Does that bother you?
I actually thought about it.
No, I said finally. It's not my job to make her understand. It never was. A year after the wedding, life had settled into something genuinely beautiful. Ryan and I bought a little Cape Cod-style house in the suburbs with a big backyard, 20 minutes from James and Susan, close enough for Sunday dinners, far enough for our own space. I'd left freelancing behind for a job as art director at a design agency I loved so much it barely felt like work. Ryan was thriving at his architecture firm. We were building a life together, and I was pregnant. Susan cried when we told her. James tried not to and failed completely. Mike's kids were already arguing over who'd be the baby's favorite cousin. One Sunday, Susan and I were painting the nursery a soft sage green, hanging tiny mobiles. Thought of any names? She asked. Grace, I said. If it's a girl, Grace Olivia Reyes. Susan's eyes welled up. That's beautiful. The Reyes part is non-negotiable, I added. I wanted to carry the name of the family that chose her mother. Susan pulled me into a hug. You know, she said, when I saw you sitting alone in that restaurant, I had no idea we'd end up here. I just saw someone who needed kindness. You saved my life that night. No, sweetheart, she said, pulling back, holding my shoulders. You saved yourself. We just showed you it was possible. 5 years to the day after that lonely table at Lakeside Tavern, I sat at the head of a very different one. The Reyes house was loud chaos, the best kind. Grace, 6 months old, was being passed lap to lap like a small drooling treasure. Mike's kids argued over some complicated card game in the corner. Jennifer and Ryan debated the correct way to carve a turkey. James snuck extra pie when he thought Susan wasn't watching. She was. All right, everyone, Susan said, clapping her hands. Before we eat, we need a toast. Hannah, would you do the honors? I stood, Grace in my arms, and looked around at the family I'd found, the family that had found me. 5 years ago tonight, I said, I was sitting alone in a restaurant, wondering if I'd ever belong anywhere. I thought I was unlovable. Too much, too difficult, too dramatic. Ryan squeezed my knee under the table. Then a stranger named Susan Reyes walked up to my table and said, nobody should eat alone on this day. And everything changed. James wiped his eyes. Susan was already crying. So here's my toast to family. Not the one we're born into, but the one we build. The one we choose. The one that chooses us back. To family, everyone echoed. Glasses clinked. Grace gurgled. James finally snagged his second slice of pie. Looking around at these people, my people, I felt something I'd spent my entire childhood chasing. Belonging, complete and unconditional. For the first time in my life, I was home. After dinner, Ryan and I sat on the back porch with Grace asleep in her carrier between us, wrapped in blankets against the November chill, watching stars come out one by one. Do you ever think about them? Ryan asked quietly. Your biological parents? I considered it. Sometimes. Late at night, mostly. I wonder how they're doing, if they've changed, if they ever really understood what they lost. Do you think they have? I shook my head slowly. People rarely do. Not in the ways that matter. Does that make you sad? I looked down at Grace, tiny fist curled near her cheek, chest rising and falling steadily. It used to, I said. Not anymore. I spent so many years sad about a family that didn't want me.
I don't have room for that now.
My life's too full. Ryan wrapped his arm around me. What changed? I did. I stopped waiting for them to love me the way I needed. I stopped shrinking myself to fit their version of who I should be. And I started building something new. Through the window, I could see the Reyes family, my family, laughing, clearing plates, wrapping leftovers. Setting boundaries isn't revenge, I said softly. It's survival. It's choosing yourself when nobody else will. Ryan kissed my forehead. I'm glad you survived. Me too. Grace stirred, making soft, sleepy sounds. I lifted her close. I'll never make you earn my love, I whispered. I promise you'll never wonder if you're wanted. You'll always know. She yawned and drifted back off. If you're watching this and you've ever been the scapegoat in your own family, told you're too much, too sensitive, always starting drama just because you asked to be treated fairly, I want you to hear this. It was never you. It never was. You deserve to be chosen. Not as a backup, not as a last resort, not as the acceptable sacrifice whenever someone else's comfort is on the line. Chosen first. Chosen fully. Chosen with no conditions attached. Family isn't blood. It is an obligation. It isn't people who share your DNA, but treat you like a burden. Family is the people who show up, the people who notice you crying alone at a restaurant table and pull up a chair for you. The people who open their Sunday dinners, their hearts, and yes, even their legal paperwork to make you officially, permanently, undeniably theirs. I spent 27 years trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. Then I spent 5 years learning what love actually looks like, not from the family I was born into, but from the one that chose me. If the people who are supposed to love you have proven, again and again, that you'll always come last, you have every right to build your own family. You have every right to walk away. You have every right to be happy. That's not revenge. That's not drama. That's just living your life without people who never earned a seat at your table. I found my people, and I hope with everything in me that you find yours too. You deserve it. Thank you for sticking with this story to the end. If it meant something to you, take a second to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It genuinely helps more people find these stories. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with your own family?